This episode of the Police One podcast is sponsored by Officer Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting officerstore.com. Hey, welcome back to Policing Matters on policeone.com. I'm your host, Jim Dudley. Welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time listening, and be sure and check us out on YouTube as well. Well, 3 years ago now, I spoke with then Captain Don Redman of the Chula Vista Police Department about their very robust drone program and their live 911 program. Today, we're hearing more and more about agencies deploying drones as first responders, their DFR programs. And today, we have a few members of the Fremont, California Police Department and Fire Department to walk us through, pun intended, their program. So first, I'd like to welcome Police Lieutenant Heidi Kindorf. In addition to her current capabilities and responsibilities, she oversees several collateral units, including the department's Unmanned Aircraft Systems, their UAS, and Drone as First Responder program, the DFR. Welcome, Lieutenant Kindorf.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you for having us.
Sure. And then also from the Fremont Police Department, Police Sergeant Ken Kwok. He was one of the first officers who deployed the UAS for the department and helped create the unit in 2016. He is currently the sergeant in charge of the UAS unit, specifically the Drone as First Responder program. Welcome, Sergeant Kwok.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Not a sir, but thanks. And finally, Fire Department Deputy Chief Heather Mosdeen. Heather Mosdeen joined the city of Fremont in January of 2023, and prior to Fremont, she served as Deputy Chief of Operations for the Oakland, California Fire Department. And as the Deputy Chief in Fremont, she oversees the operations, administration, training, and EMS divisions. Welcome, Deputy Chief Mosdeen.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great having you all. And Lieutenant Kindorf, if you can kick it off, can you describe how your Drone as First Responder is different from other programs? And then if the Chief Mosdeen can jump in and talk about maybe some of the differences in the fire department program.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. So really, our program is different than the traditional DFR program that I think most agencies, public safety agencies, are using, because it's actually a joint program. So between the fire department and police department, since the inception of drones for the city of Fremont, we've actually worked very collaboratively together to drive both programs forward. So our DFR program is a joint public safety model. So it's really us and our fire counterparts working together to create an environment where we're able to implement this technology for our city.
Chief Mosdeen?
Yeah, and to add to that on the fire side, I think a traditional kind of drone model, as people might experience it, is kind of if you get on an incident, you fly a drone for that incident. But in this model, the drones take off at the call. And so with the police and fire model of DFR, it enables police officers to fly for fire and for fire to fly for police incidents, which sort of makes it more robust. It makes it more robust, and that we can get drones on scene faster. And also we have sort of the redundancy of having another department support us.
Right. So Sergeant Kwok, if you can describe, so there's so many varieties of drones out there, so many vendors, and the types of drones. I know early on in DFR programs and UAS programs that you often had to have a trained, specified officer with line of sight vision, operating from a console, and pretty much, guiding them to the specific locations. But now they're almost autonomous. We've seen some drones on a tether over responding vehicles, stationary vehicles. Tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts and the types of calls that you're sending drones to.
Well, Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about the advancement of technology. When we first started this program back in 2016, we were using Phantom 3s and Phantom 4s, which were DJI platforms. And essentially, they were hobbyist drones. They weren't built for public safety, but since then, the market has definitely moved towards the needs of having thermal cameras, of having FLIR, of having all the support systems that we need to accomplish our missions. What we fly for right now are public safety and life preservation missions that can include barricade suspects, hostage situations, active shooters, fleeing suspects, high-risk search warrants. So we will deploy for anything that can basically be a public safety and life preservation mission. On top of that, if need be, God forbid, mass casualty events, we can also deploy for that. Lost or missing persons, rescue events, disaster response. We've deployed our drones several times for flooding that happened in Niles Canyon, where unified command has to be established for both fire and police. Just recently, unfortunately, we had a fire up in our Mission Hills. But fortunately, we had DFR running at that time where we could provide actionable intelligence to the firefighters and police officers on the ground, where we would have to, God, if we had to end up evacuate people from those disaster areas. We have used our drones for suspected explosive devices, and we have also deployed them for fire suppression investigations as well as hazmat scenarios. So all that to say that our drones are being deployed a lot more often, a lot more pretty much for any police or public safety related call where life is possibly being threatened. And that technology is advancing so quickly as well that it's making our jobs truly a lot easier.
Yeah, and of course, we can think of all the advantages of a drone getting there before a patrol unit to check out weapons on scene, suspects, directions of travel, all those things, ambush points maybe. But in the day-to-day operations, traffic collisions, evidence-laden scenes where, I've worked with Brink, and I've just visited Skydio headquarters nearby, and the capabilities of using them to document crime scenes, I mean, to the inch, to the millimeter, really reduces officers' time in actually going out with measurements and documentation afterwards. Are you using it for those kinds of things as well?
Yes, actually, we use Pix4D, which is a mapping software that we've been using. We are also looking into other technology like the Pharaoh for the drones. I was a CSI for 5 years, and we actually used Total Station back in the day. So it was the point and click, point and click. It would take us hours to do a very extensive scene. Right now, we've documented officer-involved shootings. We've documented shootings, stabbings, where we have a large scene, and we can fly that drone and basically hit those points with Pix4D, and we can do it within the matter of half an hour. Something that would have traditionally taken us a couple hours. And not only does that preserve our deployment power with our officers, but it also frees up our officers to go to other critical emergencies if those pop off. It really is a force multiplier when it comes to our department.
Absolutely. And Chief Mosdeen, we heard about the possibilities for search and rescue. What are the other kind of fire-related calls are you using it for?
We can use it for structure fires, for vegetation fires. We can use it for, as Sergeant Kwok said, we can use it for hazmat incidents, plume modeling, kind of anything where an aerial view is advantageous, which is on a lot of incidents, but particularly useful in the wildland setting, so we can see exactly how fast the flame front's moving or the direction that it's moving. For structure fires, we can look at exposure threat. So it's really, really useful. And then just in the flooding to search for victims that may be in the water. These drones can put out a heat signature, so we've used them for water rescues. It's incredibly useful for both fire and for rescue operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd like to ask both you and Lieutenant Kindorf about the ability for off-site command personnel. You're both in command. If we have a mass casualty incident or even just a large event where there are no issues or problems, the ability to deploy a drone and for you to sit back at an operations center, an off-site operations center. We have our line officers on scene handling it, boots on the ground, uh, you know, trying to track people down, arrest them, gather evidence, put water on fire and all that. How is it in sitting back at that operations center, being able to see things maybe the first responder can't see? And so you're making moves and getting it there. How's the drones been as far as giving you that kind of material that you haven't had before?
I think for us, it's a game changer because typically the command folks in those command rooms are almost blind visually, right? Your intel is largely based on radio traffic. And so you're trying to create this picture based on the radio traffic that you hear. But now we have this other element where all of a sudden, yes, you can see what the crews see, but also you can see additional information that they can't see. So you're able to be a much more valuable resource and you're better informed. So it's a total game changer for us in that realm.
Yeah, Lieutenant Kindorf, same.
Yeah, and to expand on that, especially for us on the PD side, right? I mean, before doing like a roll call for like containment on some sort of scene, it was all just verbal and saying, "Hey, I'm at AB cross street or whatnot." But now actually being able to have a drone DFR or a patrol deployment, be able to get that in the air and also lock down the scene and provide overwatch instantaneously as something is unfolding. And then also as for our watch commanders, captains, when we do have those type of scenarios or situations, to be able to have that live stream video to, again, double check, triple check, and or contingency plan, right? That's what it's all about, is making sure that we've got all of our figurative I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure that we're operating to our most effective ability.
Yeah, so often in those, off-site platforms, you have others than police, fire, maybe public health. Who can see the feeds from the drones? Can someone with the IP address off-site log on and watch from there as well? Or do you clamp it down? Do you have some sort of a safeguard so that others can't see it?
So we do have a safeguard. We do run an operating system. DroneSense is the platform that our agency and city currently uses to operate all of our UAS deployments, to include our DFR deployments. So we can send links out, and there is a group. So anytime that one of our drones deploys, there is a set group list that basically gets a link to be able to view that video of that flight. But you can also do ad hoc, emails and basically, or phone numbers, and send that on the spot. So if it's a joint operation mission, say with one of our neighboring cities, to any direction, if we link up with their incident commander or whatnot, and they want to see the video, we could absolutely do that. If some sort of investigation goes into another city, or if for some reason we're working with somebody in the city that doesn't have that link already being sent to them, we can easily add that very quickly.
Yeah, Chief Mosdeen, oversight of EMS. I remember back in the day jumping in the back of ambulance rig, getting to the hospital, and they're online essentially with the hospital giving information as they're en route. Are the drones being used in that capacity? Are we seeing doctors in the ER viewing injuries on scene, things like that? Are you using it for those kinds of issues?
Not at this point, largely because with the exception of, vehicle accidents and things that happen outside, most EMS calls that we respond to are inside, and there's no application for drones inside. So we're still relying on good old technology for relaying information. Although technology has improved, we can now send EKGs and stuff via our monitors. We're not using drones for that sort of EMS stuff. Now it may be useful in in an MCI incident or a water rescue, just to paint a better picture to the ER staff about what happened. to provide, a greater understanding of mechanism of injury or something, but largely we're not using it in the EMS capacity.
Not yet. So what are the challenges? What's been the biggest concern? What's the community reaction? Any of you have experience going to a meeting where you're talking about the drone and you're hearing some concerns or some challenges from the community?
The community in Fremont has largely been very, very accepting of this. So we haven't really heard much pushback. And I haven't heard much on the fire side. I'll let Heidi and Ken sort of speak to the PD side, but largely the community has embraced this in a way that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, to expand on what Deputy Chief Mosdeen said, our community is absolutely in love with this technology. I think they understand what it does and how it actually improves everything that we do, both on the fire side and the PD side, and makes each time we go out into the community, makes us all that much more effective. We actually did last year, though, a series of in-person and also virtual presentations, specifically around DFR, and Ken Kwok specifically led, I think, 2 out of the 3 of those. To do exactly what you're talking about, engage with the community, hear their concerns, give them a platform to express anything. And largely, it was none of our community members actually expressing any concerns. We had a few minor concerns, but they were not from anybody based in our community. So I'll let Ken talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we've been very transparent from the very beginning since we created this unit back in 2016. We've had numerous community presentations. We've had numerous outreach events. We've proactively sent our UAV teams out into the public to engage the community, to show them that we have nothing to hide, that these tools are exactly that. They're tools. There are still officers behind these tools. There are people that are flying these drones. We have strict policies that are put into place governing what we can and can't fly for. I think this has been a litmus test for truly how well our engagement efforts have been with our community, that we have been able to outreach and engage and talk and be transparent. And part of that is also, part of that is not hiding our flights either. So we do have a transparency portal for our DFR flights right now, which show all of our flights, absent of some sort of critical investigation for investigative purposes that we can't release that flight data. We're posting everything, and we're transparent, and we've engaged the community. And this wasn't just a shoot from the hip kind of scenario when it came to this community engagement. We've been engaging for since we've really started this program back in 2016. So I would say that the challenges haven't been so negative. I'd say it's curiosity. I think people want to know what the capability of these drones are, and they're excited to see what we can do, and hopefully we can serve the community better from the fire and police side.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I know some communities, my own former department, San Francisco PD's, had a tough time getting any kind of technology up in the air or on a pole. We've heard of communities. Chicago right now is pushing back on ShotSpotter. They don't want ShotSpotter in their city. Despite the ubiquity of cameras everywhere today, it's still, for me, it's curious on how a city can fight back on technology, especially with such, diminishing forces, police and even fire now. Hey, I want to talk to you about the limits of the program, some of the challenges that you've come up against. But first, I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Officer Store, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at officerstore.com. And we're back and speaking with Police Lieutenant Heidi Kindorf, Police Sergeant Ken Kwok, Fire Department Deputy Chief Heather Mosdeen on their drone as first responder in Fremont, California. And I want to throw it out there. police and fire. What are the limits? What have you seen as the limits of the program? How extensive can it be? Sergeant Kwok, you talked about the capabilities of your drones now, and what I heard was they're almost described as we would have described a bomb robot or some of the other technology that we've used in barricaded suspects, where in the past we've used a throw phone or things like that. I know some of the drones have a hovering capability. They have a capability to break glass, to get inside and move around and hover. What have you seen as far as the limits of your program?
I would say the limits are anytime that you have technology, you have to automatically prepare for it to not work. And there've been some troubleshooting issues when it comes to technology. I mean, that's every technology. That's the MDTs you have in your computer. That's your code 3 lights. You know, sometimes things don't work, the way that they're designed to, and you just have to work the problem. So with the advancement of technology, with the advancement of our capabilities, there's also been an advancement of troubleshooting as well. So there are times when the system doesn't work according to plan, and you just have to work the problem. And that's just like anything else. You know, you have your cell phone that won't work in certain dead spots. Same with our drones. There's sometimes some radio frequency interference that definitely limits the range of our drone deployments. But just got to work the problem. I'm fortunate that I have 26 other officers and CSOs that work with me, and with that comes a lot of different experience. I have one guy that used to work for IT, and I have a couple of others that were in the private sector that were also former tech folks, and it's you just gotta work it. It's not like a Nintendo where you can take out the cartridge and blow on it. It's a little bit different than that, but we definitely the limits are that the byproduct of having more capabilities is that you will have to do more troubleshooting.
Yeah, and it seems that they're much more simplified than like IT applications, where when we first got into computers, we had the IT specialist who came in and spoke a different language. And, it was the old Saturday Night Live skit, move, get away, let me do it, right? Drones are much more easily accessible. And Chief Mosdeen, I want to ask you about the fire applications. And if I'm thinking about, some of the current fire situations in Northern California, you've got a ton of smoke, you've got really windy conditions, you've got other climate conditions that are actually inspired by the fire themselves. What have you seen as far as, your capabilities of getting in or out of a fire situation?
Yeah, those are things we definitely have to consider, the thermal lift, the smoke conditions, obviously wind, weather. On a large incident, there may be a lot of other aircraft in the air, so we may not be able to fly drones. So there are definitely some considerations in that. And then some other fire considerations are, in a hazmat incident, what's that chemical, and do we want to put a drone in it, right? Just like a consideration we would make for a person, like that's not a cheap piece of equipment. We don't want to destroy it by flying it into something that's toxic or that will destroy it. So there are considerations that we do have to make. There are limitations. One of the biggest limitations we're seeing on the fire side is just the staffing. We have firefighters trained in fire suppression, and we largely need them to do that. And then when we have the need for a drone responder, it takes away from firefighting. So we need to expand sort of our view in that way of who's flying these drones, get more pilots trained so that we have a greater workforce that can sort of supplement this system.
Yeah, and when we talk about drones being on a frequency, back in the day when we were responding to EOD or bomb calls, whether intentional or accidental or an act of terrorism, we were all told turn off your radios for the frequencies. Any consideration? I don't know who can answer that, Sergeant Kwok or Lieutenant Kindorf, as far as EOD situations. Are drones being used there, or is there some hesitancy there?
So we have not had any active EOD calls where we've done it, but there is talk in the ecosystem of drones of using these for EOD circumstances with live ordnance. And the answer to that has always been, I will always sacrifice my drone if it saves a life. So if we are able to contain this mechanism or grenade or whatever it is, munitions within a certain radius, if it sets it off with the drone, then at least somebody else didn't get hurt by it. And I think that's pretty much why these drones were created and why we use them. Truly, if this can save a life, if we can destroy a $3,000, $5,000 drone, we'll do it every single time if it saves a life, and that prevents a person from going forward and doing it. So whether it's a bomb robot or a drone inspecting a ordnance, we will very happily detonate or sacrifice one of our drones to save life.
All right. Lieutenant Kindorf, you want to jump in on that?
No, I think Ken succinctly put that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? And we have to use the tools that are at our disposal to be able to, excuse me, render any scene safe. And if there is an EOD either suspected or confirmed at a scene, that we're going to weigh out the risks, rewards, and then figure out what's going to be the best way to render the scene safe, right? Very similarly to the robots that, EOD type teams deploy to help assist. Maybe it's in conjunction with one of those, right? It's providing an overwatch as they maneuver the robot to help render that device safe. And if in the blast radius, if that is something that, hey, is a byproduct, it takes down a UAS, I think for the greater good, that's totally okay. But again, we have not experienced that here in Fremont yet, but it is something that, I think there are plenty of contingency plans, training, those type of things on how we can best utilize this type of equipment.
Yeah. Listen, I want to wrap up being respectful of your time. I want to ask about the autonomy of drones. And I know, again, Skydio's got this rooftop deployment system where drones are almost autonomous. I say almost because there's always going to be a human monitoring the flight and progress and the activity. Are drones being used to take police and fire reports on the fire side? Every 6 years, I've got to clean up around my cabin and make sure firewood's stacked and the stuff's off the ground, the fuel's off the ground. Are you doing, Chief Mosdeen, fire inspections, either residential or commercial properties, things like that?
We're not using that right now. I mean, it is an amazing tool, and we've thought about sort of that as one of the things that we could use it for. There's some remote areas where it's very difficult to get people into, and drones could be a great solution for that. We're not there yet, but the program has a lot of growth to do, and we're kind of excited about the future of it and its capabilities.
Yeah, great. And Lieutenant Kindorf, are you sending drones out in advance or in place of humans to take any kinds of reports?
Not reports, but specifically with like de-escalation and those type of things, using a UAS, especially in the DFR model, where it's, as the call's coming in, you hear it and you're like, hey, as officers are going, we can oftentimes beat officers on scene and assess the situation, confirm or dispel whether there is a weapon involved or not. And that really allows our officers to respond and utilize their tools to the best of their ability. And ultimately, it's all about safety, right? Safety for the community, safety for the responding public safety personnel. So we aren't taking reports yet, although I could see there, in the future, as these pieces of technology become more robust, being able to, go fly, land, and then basically record, right? Those type of things. But no, we're not there yet. But it is something that we definitely try to utilize and leverage to the best of our ability to provide the best service to our community.
Yeah, and I mentioned the diminishing numbers of personnel and the ability for drones to fill the gaps. I'm thinking about some of the local agencies, the smaller agencies that say, hey, we just don't have enough people to go check every silent alarm, 4th of July or New Year's Eve. How many calls do you get on the police and fire side for fireworks, or what it might sound like gunshots. Do you have a plan to say, hey, this is a list of when we're going to send a drone in place of real people? And I think in those situations where agencies have just said, hey, we're not going anymore, just doesn't it make sense to send a drone?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think because staffing's at an all-time critical level, I think across the nation, right? I think many agencies are experiencing, exponentially higher vacancies than they have the previous decades before us. So how do we combat that, but yet deliver the same service or improve our service? And I think doing exactly what you're talking about and reevaluating how we can respond to calls and utilizing the technology and tools such as drones, especially the DFR model, right? So drone is first responder, call comes in, hey, do we have a drone available? Be able to launch that. And then either clear the call, meaning, hey, this isn't something that police or fire needs to go to. And now we're able to take those resources, right, those firefighters and or officers, and redeploy them to other scenes, which is critical when we are only working with so many, right? Our bandwidth is only so broad right now. We're obviously all actively working to fill our vacancies. And if you're looking for a job, we are hiring. So please check out our website. But yeah, I mean, utilizing this technology for being able to clear calls and use our resources to the best of our ability is absolutely something that we try to do day in and day out.
Yeah, I saw what you just did there on recruiting. That was a good move. Just good job. Hey, Sergeant Kwok, I want to end with you. I think about put you on the spot. If you said, hey, I'm the guy in charge, we're not using drones for this yet. I want to start tomorrow using drones for ...
I would say that we're definitely using drones to supplement our patrol staffing, and we're definitely using drones to help give that different perspective that an officer wouldn't have on the ground, or a firefighter wouldn't have them on the ground. We're using drones to save lives, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. Whether it's the public, whether it's an officer, whether it's a firefighter, we are using these drones to give us a force multiplier to help save lives. And this, I know we talk about drones as being the newest thing, right? It's kind of like drones and the real-time crime center. I know those are the real two catchphrases in the police, police departments across the country right now. But I think what we need to emphasize too is who's behind those drones. I mean, there are skilled officers that are working behind those drones. We're not sending the drone to a scene. We're not sending DFR to a scene. We're not sending that piece of technology to the scene per se. What we're sending is a tool so that the person behind that who's monitoring the situation can allocate resources appropriately. So that's truly what drones are doing. We're giving the capabilities and the perspective to give to a skilled police officer, skilled firefighter, in order to allocate resources appropriately to save lives.
Awesome. Okay, Chief Mosdeen, any final thoughts on the fire side?
I just kind of want to reiterate what Sergeant Kwok said. Drones are an amazing tool, but we can't lose sight of how important the human aspect is to customer service in both the police department and the fire department. When citizens call, we can send a drone out there and give us a lot of information and a lot of intel, but ultimately they need somebody there who's going to be able to help, sort of solve their problem with some compassion and relate to them and explain to them. So there is an amazing capability that drones will offer us, but it's not going to get away from the customer service that we have to provide in order to be good public servants for our citizens.
So we're not just sending robots out just yet.
Not yet, and I don't know if we ever will, but
well, we'll see. Well, maybe we'll see. Lieutenant Kindorf, thanks so much. Any final remarks?
No, thank you, Jim. It's been absolutely a pleasure to speak with you this morning, and on behalf of the city of Fremont, the fire department, and the police department, we appreciate your time and having us on your show to talk a little bit about our program.
Yeah, my pleasure. Police Lieutenant Heidi Kindorf, Police Sergeant Ken Kwok, and Fire Department Deputy Chief Heather Mosdeen from Fremont, California. Thank you all for sharing today. And I would imagine if we've got some agencies looking at a DFR drone as first responder program, they can seek you out. We've got some links for our listeners. We've got your full bios. We've got descriptions of your program, some other media there that if our listeners or our viewers are watching and want more information, it is there for you. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. Hope you enjoyed today's program. And like I just said, there are links in the show notes for you to learn more. And if you have questions for today's guests, you can look them up or drop me an email at policingmatters@policeone.com. That's policingmatters@policeone.com. Hope I can answer the questions or make the links for you. And let me know if you have a good idea for a show or somebody you want to hear from or something you want to hear about. Happy to research that for you. All right. Take good care. Thanks for stopping in and stay safe. Hope to talk to you again real soon.